So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can see, it's a little chilly in DC, so I've got on my turtleneck, and we're excited to have this conversation with you guys. A couple of quick things to get us started. We have um, learned through all of these different webinars that we are recording this. It'll be available after this. But we'd like to say that you should not use any artificial intelligence tools during the course of this meeting and record it for yourself. It's one of our services that we offer to our members, so that's a little bit of nuance there. So recording by participants is prohibited unless you have prior permission. So just FYI, we'll put it together, we'll package it, we'll put it out, share it with you. So there's that part. We would also like to ask you to not use AI to do transcription and all those other things. So just a little bit there. We would love for you guys to stay on mute if you can, so there's not a lot of background noise, so everybody can hear what's being said. And we're just excited to have this conversation. So let me just sort of tee this up. Justine Staten is the chair of the Coalition of State Horse Councils. And she and I have been talking for a little while about the nuances that occurred during the pandemic, and state horse councils were struggling. We've seen recently some state horse councils that have had a lot of transition. So we thought the whole reason for this call was to try to see sort of what the state of things are. So Justine's going to kick us off with a little conversation about the history of the formation of state horse councils and how the coalition of state horse councils came together. And then we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about, some of the nuances that go on with this kind of thing. So Justine, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can figure out how to do speaker view. So when you start talking, you guys should see Justine.
Well, thank you, Julie, very much. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see such a large turnout today. This is exciting. So as you heard, I am the chair of the Coalition of State Horse Councils, and I wanted to begin with some history on the formation of the State Horse Councils and the Coalition of State Horse Councils. So to review, the American Horse Council was founded in 1969. It's a DC-based national association representing all segments of the horse industry with a mission to promote and protect all breeds, disciplines, and equine interests by maintaining active communications with Congress, federal agencies, the media, and the industry itself. Structured as a 501c6 organization, the American Horse Council is led by, as we know, President Julie Broadway under the guidance of the Board of Trustees. It operates with 6 standing committees and currently 2 key advisory groups, the Marketing Alliance and the United Horse Coalition, both focused on advancing large-scale initiatives that support and sustain the equine industry. And I want to talk about how the Coalition of State Horse Councils fits into all of this. Julie, can I share my screen real quick? Okay, so there, hopefully you can see that. I may have to expand it so you can see it better, but this is the timeline of the Coalition of State Horse Councils. So as you see, in December 8th of 1984, there was a task force initiative formed by the American Horse Council aimed at strengthening standards and structure for state horse councils. Then September of 1999, the American Horse Council formally recognized the group as a committee, and that was the State Horse Council Committee, with a mission to promote all facets of the horse industry through national leadership and a forum for networking. Number 2, to also influence state-level legislation and policy via grassroots engagement. And number 3, to facilitate information exchange between American Horse Council and state horse councils and industry stakeholders. Then between 2009 and 2011, the State Horse Council Committee evolved into the State Horse Council Advisory Committee and later rebranded itself as the Coalition of State Horse Councils. It was then recognized as an organizational member of the American Horse Council with strategic goals that the coalition aimed to establish accreditation standards and best management practices for state horse councils through these efforts, though these efforts did remain unrealized. In 2012, there was a strategic planning meeting that outlined potential programs to support state horse councils with professional development as an idea. To date, the primary success was the creation of a website and shared document library called a toolbox, and that was only temporarily active.
So,
So,
Justine, I want to chime in. So, to put some context to this, everybody should know every state should have a state horse council, in my personal opinion. But right now, there are only 26 states that have a recognized state horse council. And what that means is that some of them have formed, but they haven't really got a good governance structure. Some of them have pulled together and they still don't have the means to be part of the coalition. So there's a lot of little nuances. So we're 50-50 right now, folks. We have some that are part of this, some that are not. So Justine, take it from there.
all right, thank you. So I'm just going to summarize kind of what we just went over. The Coalition of State Horse Councils was founded to strengthen, empower, and elevate the voice of the state horse councils, representing the grassroots horsemen across the nation while staying connected to the national developments, which is pretty important. So I'm going to share this other graphic just because it helps to remind us of some of the mission. And so the mission of the Coalition of State Horse Councils originally was to lay a strong foundation, promoting industry leadership, influencing policy, and fostering collaboration. So we're doing this today in hopes that we can reignite that vision with renewed purpose. And I just want to ask you, are you ready to help shape the future of your state horse council? If so, what do you need? We want to know that. Do you need accreditation standards, best management practices, professional development?
Get a copy of this stuff.
So
We should get a
you see
recording.
yourself as a catalyst for education, advocacy, and the promotion of all facets of the equine industry in your state? Well, that's really what we're here to talk about today. You can build a legacy and you can shape a future where your horse council thrives locally and nationally. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and say, let's talk. It begs the question, are state horse councils necessary or have they served their purpose? And we're hopeful that everybody feels that what they're doing is important and that maybe you would want to share some of that, or if you have pain points or things where you feel that you need help, that you would kind of bring that forward so that we can figure out ways to help navigate that and help you overcome some of your challenges. Jeanette has her hand up.
Thank
Jeanette,
you,
hi,
Justine.
good to see you.
Yes, good to see you. I'm the president of the Vermont Horse Council, and we have a pain point that's happening right now. We're working with our legislators in the state of Vermont to get horses recognized as agricultural status, because all the horse farms in Vermont are covered as far as environmental laws. Are required to adhere to all the laws that all the agricultural designated farms are required to comply with, but we do not get tax advantages of being agriculture, nor can we apply for grants that are associated with any of the agricultural grants that come up. So we have put a bill together last year with our legislators. It has, and we're really at a crossroads now where we really feel like we need to have a lobbyist that helps us with this. However, we're a 501(c) and we're not allowed to we don't have a huge budget to begin with. And so we're looking to try and find out if the American Horse Council or the Coalition of Horse Councils can help us with taking donations from members who are willing to do that, so that we can pay this lobbyist.
Well, I think that's kind of a perfect segue to another point that we were going to kind of talk about. And maybe, I don't know if this is, maybe Amanda can kind of shed some light on this, or Julie or Emily, but the rules regarding the advocacy efforts of a 501c3 versus a 501c6, and what are ways to navigate around those restrictions as a C3, as we're hearing Jeanette bring forward.
So I apologize, but Julie's computer just froze. So I'll do my
Oh.
best to answer the question as I can. And then when Julie comes back, she can come in as the official word. But, you know, we're always happy to do what we have bandwidth for at the state level for any member. The issue, like Jeanette just brought up, is 501c3s, which the state councils are themselves, can't lobby directly. So I don't think it would be out of the question to set up a system like that, Jeanette. But again, I don't want to speak for Julie and about what our current capabilities are, just based on the fact that, you know, we focus on federal stuff because we're a staff of 2, and that's pretty much all Amanda and I have time for. But again, you know, a donation strategy like that to help you guys hire an outside consulting firm, I think isn't an unreasonable thought.
If I can just add, I don't know what as a federal only lobbyist, I don't know what the state rules are for state level lobbyists. So that's a situation that's new to me, because clearly I can lobby on behalf of the American Horse Council up on the Hill with no problems. It was really interesting for me to hear that you're not allowed to. In some cases, 501c3s are not allowed to lobby at the state level. That's very interesting for me to learn. So I would just say maybe you don't even need to hire a lobbyist. Maybe what you need to do is get a discussion going amongst your state council members and see if any of your members are willing to, on their own recognizance, make phone calls, send letters, send emails, post things on social media, and tag their members, tag their delegates, tag the mayor. I don't think it needs to cost money necessarily.
I think it does now, Amanda. We've done that.
Okay.
We've gotten to that point. We have very good relationship with the agricultural committee legislators, but we need somebody to be boots on the ground, helping, because there's so many places that the agricultural language touches, that we need to have boots on the ground to figure this out. And we've identified a gal that is a lobbyist here in Montpelier. She's very familiar with this stuff. She's given us a very, very good rate for annual contract. And we're just going to get ready to go into legislation. The legislators come back to session in January, I think on the 6th, and we would like to hit the ground running. And we have a lot of farms that are interested, but we need a place to funnel the money to pay her. And we can't do it because our budget is, our treasury is so low. Well, it's about $30,000, and there's only a certain percent of the amount of money that we have in our coffers that we are allowed to spend on lobbying. And that it's a lot more.
I feel like I agree, Jeanette, that it's important to go ahead and get a lobbyist involved, because sometimes that's the only way to make those deals work. Yeah. And it may be, and because I've seen this in a breed organization in our state, they utilized one member on a personal basis, so funds were filtered through that member who hired the lobbyist to work on behalf of the member who had the agenda that represented the organization. And I think Karen had a suggestion. Karen took herself off mute. Karen?
Hi, thank you. Just a thought based on experiences in New York. We've been very successful in New York with equine with, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the Horse Council, just in general in equine, with collaboration with our New York Farm Bureau, who has paid legislative, and they are also very interested in equine as an important part of agriculture. And so in Vermont, if you are interested in making some of that coalition building, you might partner with your Farm Bureau for this particular kind of advocacy, because they have the staff and would likely be able to help you in that process.
Yeah,
I can see that
we have,
challenge.
yeah, we have tried to do that. However, we get a lot of lip service from our Farm Bureau, and they do have a 501 6, I think it is, that they're allowed to
Yep.
lobby.
Yeah.
But they give us lip service, but they don't really do anything. And they
And
have
I'm-
things in their policy, but there's a lot of personalities associated with this, and they're really interesting cows.
Well, and exactly.
I'm not
and
surprised to
that's
hear that at
Kansas
all.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't have equine listed in their bylaws, if you will, if they don't have equine as their as a livestock species that they want to represent, they're not going to give you their lobbyists, they're not going to give you their time. And some state horse councils work very closely with their Farm Bureau. In those states, they do recognize the equine in the ag space. In Kansas, though they recognize equine in the ag space, they do not represent equine. And I have the same pain points, Jeanette. I know what you're talking about. So really, it does have to be driven by your organization. And it seems to me that, and maybe once you start showing up, with a lobbyist and showing them that you mean business, then maybe your Farm Bureau will take interest in engaging with you after that. But maybe utilizing a member to be that filter. And I don't know if anybody else on the Zoom has any thoughts towards that.
Jeanette, I might just say too, since it sounds like your personal situation is a bit of a time sensitive one. Please email me and Julie and Amanda directly, and we'll see what we can do to try to rush things a little bit for you.
I appreciate that. It's really about getting the tax deductibility for the farms that are going to donate, or the people that are going to donate, and how to get the money to the lobbyists and keep us legal as a nonprofit.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
I will
So
email
definitely send
you.
us an email.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Thank you.
I think it sounds like if we could maybe study up a little bit better about options for a C3 to navigate some of these things, and maybe have a presentation. And I don't know if that's a tax attorney or who might be able to assist us with that, but maybe that's something for a future webinar to dive deeper into. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, additions to that? Thank you, Jeanette, for bringing that forward.
Thank you for all your help on it.
Well, hopefully hopefully you have success there. So
we're going to keep plowing forward, because it's very important to us. We've been messing around with this for 10 years, and we want to get it across the goal line. It's not fair to the people who actually bona fide make their living off of horses, other than breeding, like the therapeutic riding people and the people that have riding instruction programs. They make 51% of their income off of their farms, and they can't get agricultural status. It's just not right.
Right. And you guys have the warning law, the limited liability. Yeah. And does it read only equine, or does it read domestic animal?
It reads equine, I think.
Okay. So they have definitely carved it out separate from the other livestock then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see Julie hasn't been able to jump back on, so I'll just kind of cruise through some of the points that we were kind of talking about. Also,
It looks like maybe she's out there.
Okay.
Your apologies. I do not know what happened to my computer. It decided it wanted to just do something different from what we were doing.
Well, we're grateful to have you back. So,
Justine, before you move on, I see Frank has a question in the chat box.
Great. Okay.
He says, curious to know the status of the accreditation standards that had been discussed a while back, or more specifically, what the coalition might consider a good state horse council structure and focus.
Very fair questions. Julie, do you have any history on the accreditation standards piece, or anybody that was involved in the council back in the earlier days, or the coalition back in the earlier days?
I will
Ben?
say, I came to the council in 2016. I don't know a whole lot about accreditation. I will say we do have some guidelines that are how to form a state horse council, what are best practices, etc. We also have another booklet that is how to grow and maintain your state horse council. Happy to share that with anybody who wants to see it. The big thing about forming a state horse council is all about the governance model. It's about getting your board formed, having bylaws, figuring out all the nuances that go along with that. So anyway, happy to share any of that. But accreditation stuff, I don't know a whole lot of history about that myself.
Yeah. And I'll add some of the best practices thoughts would be, and these are just things that we try here that seem to be successful. Looking at the model that American Horse Council has with the standing committees, if you as a state horse council can try to model with standing committees so that you have a representative that has interest in shows and competitions, a representative with interest in trails, a representative with interest in health and welfare and regulatory. If you have kind of all those bases covered, and a suggestion is, when you are bringing in your board members, you make that a very thoughtful decision on how impactful they can be on behalf of the board. How wide is their reach? How wide can they impact? If they're do they have a good network where they can represent the council in that space? So if you have the HPA concerns in that's affecting shows and competitions, and you've got somebody that can really take the lead on staying on top of that and communicating with your grassroots folks and having that dialogue at your big shows in your state. Or let's say, like in Kansas, we have a new law that says that everybody, even traveling interstate, has to, or intrastate, has to have proof of negative Coggins when they're rolling down the road. So we need to get that message out. Do you have somebody that's sitting in to understand why, that can then answer questions to your constituents about the importance of that, or biosecurity questions? Or when we kind of get into some of the other things that are going to be probably touched on a little bit later on, if you approach having a board that's well-rounded in the sense of being able to represent a lot of different important committees that represent important pieces of the whole puzzle, then you'll be diversified enough to be making sure you're touching a lot of different people across your state. That's a recommendation or a best practice that I can say.
And Justine, I'll just add that if the audience doesn't know, state horse councils that are members of the coalition and members of the American Horse Council get a seat at the table for any of our standing committees. So the thing is, you have to decide how invested you are and how informed you want to be and how engaged you want to be. So I just offer that up, that if you're out there and you have not become a member of the Coalition of State Horse Councils, which is a member of the American Horse Council, there's that option there. Justine and Sue and a number of people who are on this call serve on very specific committees that we have. And that's great, insightful information and a good opportunity for you to have a voice in those kind of conversations.
So as for the accreditation, I don't know, Sue, I thought I saw you on the call earlier. Do you have any recollection of any of that discussion from way back by chance?
Hi, I joined, I mean, I've been with the American Horse Council and the Coalition since 2007. But I'm not sure what was meant by accreditation. I mean, we did talk about, what horse councils were and, good structures and so forth, but I don't recall an accreditation.
Yeah, that came out of, I pulled some old historical timeline documents out from what I had left over from the toolbox, and that was part of it. So I shared that.
Yeah.
So I will
Anyway.
add, Justine, that the staff and I have been having a conversation about creating okay, Emily, help me, a learning management center, which would be a series of videos with some quizzes at the end you could answer. And if you pass those quizzes, it could give you a quote certification. So we could definitely put that together for state horse councils. Like, do you meet these governance models? Do you have these practices in place? And if you check, then yep, okay, there you go. That gives you some more credibility, for lack of a better word.
Yep, and then we can also do kind of longer form educational modules. Like if you need to understand how to build the different governance structures, if you need to understand how to run a committee, Robert's rules, all that stuff, then we can definitely put together educational options about that as well.
Love to hear from folks on the call. It sounds like that would be a really wonderful resource library.
It looks like Howard has a question in the chat box. He's asking, how do we get the best practices that Julie just mentioned? I believe they'll be sent around to all the participants afterwards. Is that correct, Julie?
Yep, absolutely. Anybody that's interested, we've got your email address when you registered for this meeting, and we're happy to share with you all the things that we've got. And I will honestly say, and I'm going to give total credit to Justine and the coalition, one of the best things you can do is be part of their quarterly calls, because that's the best way to say, okay, we're following this model in this state, and other people can say, oh, we could use that, or they can find nuances that they can use. It's just a great network of ways to go about it. Every state horse council, because I missed the first part, sorry guys, every state horse council has a little bit of a different nuance and a different model, but it doesn't mean that you can't cherry pick, for lack of a better word, all the things that you hear from one place. I mean, Sue's a great example. She's got a checkoff program. Not every state has that. Some people have license plate revenue, others don't. All these different things. And when people start thinking about, could we do this or could we do that? It's great to learn from each other as to how you can navigate all of that.
Yeah, and equally of value is when we're hearing like what Jeanette's dealing with, or Andrea could probably share with us a new law that they're dealing with that was kind of surprising that became a law. And so when we're kind of paying attention to what's happening in other states around us, we can learn from that, and then we are more sensitive or in tune with what may be coming down the pike in our state. So there's a lot of value in that networking because sometimes there's a lot of opportunities to learn from, whether it was a mistake or an opportunity to make sure equine is front and center in front of your leaders. So
I'll add to that, Justine, that if you've already said this, my apologies, folks, is oftentimes something happens in one state and it starts to replicate itself in other places. So being on the front end of knowing what's going on in Kansas can help you determine how you want to proceed in your state. I just read a most fascinating article about Maryland, who is just standing out some new funding to sustain the equine industry. It would be fascinating to get those guys, part of this conversation and say, how did you do that? How does that work? Where do the proceeds come from? That kind of thing. So I'm just, again, putting out there lots and lots of ideas of ways. Justine just did a whole new thing in Kansas with getting funding to help substantiate, wait a minute, I'm going to draw a blank, historic horse racing. Right. So
we're bringing live horse racing back to the state. We're looking forward to that. And it was via the funding mechanism from historical horse racing machines. So, super excited about that. Good
So-
stuff.
So I don't know if you got to this yet, Justine, but one of the big things we see going on in the states is how can state horse councils really lean in and figure out strategies to help with local zoning, land use, and land loss? We hear a lot about this conversation. We're so fortunate to have Equine Land Conservation Resource. We're so fortunate to have Backcountry Horsemen of America to help with these things. But on the boots on the ground, local zoning, land use, and land loss is the big conversation that I think is going on with a lot of the state horse councils.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear from any of you if you're dealing with zoning issues or land loss, or the encroachment of urban sprawl that is then changing the dynamics of something that's been existing for you for years. And how are you addressing that, or is it being addressed? Or in your state where there may have been a multi-use trail where suddenly there's a group that decides that they don't want horses on the trail because they don't want to see horse manure, and there's just more of them than there are of equestrians. So if you're not making sure that you're involved in those conversations and working through negotiations or whatever, there's a chance that that trail opportunity could be taken away. And that happened. I know it happened in Missouri. It's happened in a couple of other states that I'm aware of, but that one came to mind because it was a big discussion. It was a trail that was actually, there was a trailhead to a therapeutic riding stable directly adjacent to it, and they lost that opportunity. It was very impactful to their business. So those are things that we as state horse councils have to be vigilant about and have to be involved in the conversations. And you don't have to be an expert lobbyist. You don't have to be an attorney. You just have to be somebody willing to have a conversation. And if somebody that's outside of the equine space doesn't know anything about horses, this is your opportunity to share what you know with them in a polite, civil, way, but sharing with them how horses are healthy for people and how the outside is good for the soul. And, it's just an opportunity to dialogue and maybe bring somebody's interest up in wanting to know more about horses. You never know. It might spark an interest and they want to get involved in horses eventually.
And if you guys are interested, I'm happy to share. There are lots of state horse councils that are 501c3s who think they can't lobby, who think they can't do advocacy work. But there are very clear guidelines about what you can and can't do. And I'm happy to share that with you because you can express yourself. You can do some things. You can't endorse a candidate. There are rules, but as a C3, there's lots and lots of things you can do to help the industry and move things forward in a very impactful way.
Well, to that point, Julie, I know while you were frozen in time there, Jeanette had brought up that they are in a very timely, sensitive situation where they are a C3 and they are needing to hire a lobbyist. So definitely, if you can share some of that information with Vermont and Jeanette, that would be outstanding. And
there are definitely nuances to that. You can, as a C3, you can find a way to partner with American Farm Bureau or others who have lobbyists, so it doesn't encroach upon your C3. We've partnered some state horse councils with the National Grange and a couple of other partners because they have people on their staff that can do that on your behalf and have the knowledge without you guys sort of getting to that fine line of, are you encroaching on what the rules are? So I'm happy to share all of that.
Right. And Frank, are you Sonoma County? I can't remember. I don't know if maybe you don't have the
Jefferson County, Colorado.
Colorado. Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember which direction. So if you want to share any tidbits of what you are dealing with there, feel free.
Well, we are pretty involved with the land use and zoning discussions, partly because the county has started a couple of years ago now, a large review of all of the land use and zoning regulations, as well as like pretty much every plan the county has. And so it's a opportune time for us to get involved in those discussions. But it seems like it just keeps getting to be more and more, like now some of the cities that had more, let's say, friendly land use and zoning regulations for equines are now considering somewhat negative changes, for the equine industry. And so it's like, oh, well, we're a county horse council. We can't just focus on the county. We've got to worry about some of these cities now. And who can pick this up? So it's just, I think even some guidance and best practices in doing some of this would probably be helpful.
Right. And I know Colorado is different than most states in that there's a lot of county horse councils, and maybe that's because your counties are pretty good size, but maybe partnering with your state horse council and addressing some of that would be helpful to unify forces, so to speak. Just a thought there.
Yep.
So
Okay, so Justine, I don't want to cut the conversation short because this is really meaningful. But there are a couple of urgent issues that I think the American Horse Council really needs state horse councils to lean in on. So I'm going to start with, since that conversation already started, I'm going to start with Emily. Talk about CAFOs, which is concentrated animal feed operations, because this has become a big deal, folks. California was hit first, others are being impacted. Now the new administration's got some new rules coming out. So Emily, talk a minute about what state horse councils need to do to defend or substantiate the rationale behind horse properties over these CAFO rules.
Sure. So CAFO stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. And what this is horse facilities, cow facilities, dairy or beef, sheep, turkey, poultry that have a large number of animals living in a confined space. So the technical definition is confined to an area where vegetation or other feed material doesn't grow during the growing season. So if you have a lot of horses in a field and they are eating the field, that's not a CAFO. But if you have an event venue or something more typical of a boarding facility, or maybe you have dirt paddocks, or you're in an area where you just don't grow grass, depending on the size of your operation and on the state enforcement, you might be considered a CAFO. And the big aspect of CAFO is the proximity of a water body to your business. So if your boarding facility is near a stream, a creek, a lake, a pond, the ocean, anything that's considered a definition under waters of the United States, which is a navigable water. So someplace that shipping lanes can be used to get from point A to point B, or something that feeds into a navigable water, then your operation is more likely to be considered a CAFO. And one of the concerns about CAFOs is that we don't feel that horse CAFOs are adequately considered in the permitting process, because we think a lot of the applications of CAFO rules are really set more towards beef and dairy and sheep and swine and other food animals. And we don't eat horses in the United States. They're performance horses, working horses, recreation horses, and their living standards are thus very different to animals we are raising for consumption. And the intent of the CAFO laws back in 1970 were for, feedlot situations. So the fact that our equine event venues are being considered CAFOs is really putting undue pressure on them to spend upwards of millions of dollars to make sure they fit into these environmental standards that the CAFOs require. And the trick about CAFO permitting is the federal government sets a list of standards for CAFOs, and then the states enforce it at the state level. And then states can also make CAFO rules more intense than the federal standards. So for some states, like Pennsylvania and Maryland in particular, most agriculture operations are seen as animal feeding operations. They might not require permitting, but the state requires manure plans, they require inspections, all kinds of things. And that all depends on how large. And some states, it's as small as 5 horses. Some states, they don't care if you're less than 50. Again, it's a state by state basis. But where the state horse councils fit in is helping to advocate for equine specific rules at the state level, because you want to make sure that the standards for manure management, the standards for wastewater management are in line with how we're keeping horses. So, at some states, it's been taken to the extreme where you can't have your wash stalls running off, that all of that wastewater from your wash stalls has to be contained in a specific overflow area that goes into a local sewer system, if that's what you have. So again, the state by state is where it gets really specific, and where the state horse councils can really chip in and make sure that their farms are adequately represented. And Frank just made a point, the navigable water, that lots of small bodies of water can qualify under WOTUS, and that is absolutely true. And it's really the smaller bodies of water that tend to get a lot of people in trouble because they don't think the water's near them, kind of qualify them for stuff. The other tricky part too is the definition of WOTUS changes. It's not intended to change frequently, but it has been, because it's been challenged in the court several times. They've already come out that they're changing it again. It's really kind of goes administration to administration. So again, the state horse councils have a big role and big potential here in terms of being good advocates in their area.
I just want to close this part of the conversation by saying, stay attuned, stay informed about what's going on in your state. And if you have questions, reach out to Emily. She's happy to chat with you about this and talk to you about the nuances that are part of this. But this is a growing trend that we're very much seeing from environmentalists. We saw it in California. We saw it go up the West Coast to Washington and around. So it is something where environmentalists, I'm not being negative about them, but where they see a win and they try to replicate it in other places. So just FYI. So I'm going to pause there. Feel free to put more questions in the chat, but I'm going to go to Amanda, because one of the big issues we'd love for you guys to lean in on is bush track racing, or what we call as unsanctioned horse racing. This is very much a subject that is complicated, and we're having to take a state-by-state approach. So Amanda, take it away.
So for those of you who may not be familiar, bush track racing happens it's more prevalent in some states than others. So you may be in a state where you don't encounter this at all. So that's why we're taking this a state by state basis. I am overseeing 2 very sharp, wonderful interns right now. One is a law student at Fordham University. The other is a veterinary studies student at Rutgers. And they have undertaken a project to form model regulations that can be taken state to state to help really get to to really create ways to really eliminate bush track racing for good. Because as we have found, the way there's enforcement gaps state by state, and even county by county. So what we are trying to accomplish is to create a standalone offense for bush track racing in states where there are RICO laws on the books. What we're trying to do is tie these incidences to RICO laws so that prosecutors have a much better chance of really getting wins. Because as we all know, prosecuting animal abuse cases. It just doesn't have the teeth as, say, prosecuting money laundering. So we are also proposing through these model regulations to do asset forfeiture and cost of care bonds, because that will help ease the burden on counties to pay for when these horses are seized. The county will have to care for them, and so we think that the people who are perpetrating these crimes should have to post a bond to pay for that. What we see the state councils weighing in on is reaching out when to your state officials. When we introduce this concept to the states, what we'd like to be able to do is get your support and your buy-in, and you really publicize the, this is important. Our state needs you to address this problem. Does anyone have any questions about bush track racing or the model resolutions?
So if you want the model language, reach out to Amanda. She's happy to share that with you. We've got a couple of really great videos we've put together about this, a lot of content, and some flyers, and we're happy to share all those things with you guys. You use them as you will, but the reason that bush track racing really became an issue for us was because of disease mitigation. It all started with USDA saying that these horses are being treated with a variety of different drugs, and they're sharing needles, and it passes diseases person to person, and then horse to horse, I should say, and then they go back to their home facility and pass it on to sanctioned horses who are not doing unsanctioned racing. And then we uncovered all these other jockey issues, all these other nuances that are part of this problem. So this is a big challenge. And now with New World screwworm coming up from the south, we are concerned that there are lots of horses that are coming in illegally across borders that are going to be part of this bush track racing process, which is just going to bring New World screwworm to us. So lots and lots of things. We don't have time to talk about it this afternoon, but lots and lots of challenges with the whole bush track racing thing. I'm going to close with one more thing I want you guys to put on your radar. We have been very engaged in having conversations about trade and tariff issues. So feel free to share whatever your thoughts are about that. Love some testimonials to help with that. We have been very engaged with the Legacy Restoration Fund, which is coming up for renewal. We have the new Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, who has announced that they have a new economic impact study from the Bureau of Economic Impact. So lots of things there. We're looking at the Forest Service roadless area conservation rule. We are looking at pending proposal to repeal the U.S. Forest Service travel rule. The largest majority, as you guys know, of our industry are recreational trail riders. And all these issues that I just outlined impact trail maintenance, trail support, and all the things that go along in that. So reach out to us. We're happy to talk to you about all those things, share all that information that we have about those nuances that are there. I'm going to pause there, and we're 10 minutes to 4, Justine, so I think we should take some Q&A.
Absolutely. Julie, thanks for covering all that. Questions, raise your hand. Howard. I have to unmute.
There's actually two Howard Gershons. I'm Steve Comedina. I'm the New Mexico Horse Council president. I served for 8 years as a state senator. And I would just like to give you some tips on what maybe is the most effective thing to do. And it's not always the paid lobbyist. And you were absolutely right. You have the right as a citizen to talk to a legislator anytime about anything. You may not be able to be the official representative, of an organization, but using again, the other agricultural organizations is a great way to do that. But what really is most meaningful is if you have members who have a friendship with someone who's a legislator, who will call them and ask their opinion whenever something comes before their committee that has to do with horses. That's the ideal thing. And so, finding out, who your legislator is. Do you have something in common with them? Do they go to the same church? Um, uh, can you work on their campaign? Can you, help put flyers door to door? Can you do calling? Those are the kind of things that catch the attention of legislators. Some states have paid legislators. We don't have a paid legislature. We're just all volunteers. But that is probably the most meaningful thing. If your members can somehow develop friendships with those legislators and let them know whenever there's bills that are coming up, a quick email to them will say, hey, I know you probably got questions about this. I'm available anytime. Here's my cell number. Please give me a call and I can fill you in on both sides, because that's important that they get both sides, not that you're misleading them. You want to build trust with them. And that would be my only thought. Again, there are, for instance, New Mexico, we can't, because we're a 501c3, we can't legally register as lobbyists. So we have another organization that can. But again, as an individual, as a citizen, you have every right to talk to your legislature, and would encourage you again to just do it starting way before sessions, before the bills are there, just building those relationships. Your kids go to the same school, whatever. So that's just a thought I would have to throw out there.
I so appreciate that testimonial, Howard, because you are spot on. Building these relationships is essential to making that kind of thing. Don't wait till there's a hot piece of legislation to build that relationship. Start early. Start thinking about how to cultivate that rapport. And I will also add to that it's not, if you don't know somebody, reach out to us at the American Horse Council. It's not uncommon for a breed or discipline association to say they have a relationship with a particular legislative person, and we make those introductions and we do those kinds of things. So that's what we're here for, guys. It's so important to just kind of keep building on that kind of thing. So Amanda, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to follow on. I know you said your name was not Mr. Gershon. You said it was something else, and I blanked. I didn't write it down in time, so I apologize. But I was just going to add to what you said and say it might be a wise idea for state horse council leadership to, when they see opportunities for interactions with local leaders. Chambers of Commerce often have get to know your legislator breakfasts or meet and greets. Maybe it might be a wise idea for horse council leaders to just send out email blasts and say, hey, so-and-so is going to be meeting with constituents on blah, blah date. It might be an opportunity for you to get to know them. And in the course of those conversations, you might say, hey, why don't you come out to see my farm and see how we do things out here?
Absolutely, Amanda. Great suggestion. Again, I think the impetus, Justine, you chime in the last 5 minutes here, is we want to get you guys energized. We want to get you guys mobilized. We want you to get engaged in what's going on. And we're here to help you figure out how to do that. And the Coalition of State Horse Councils is an absolutely fabulous way to do that. If you don't have an official state horse council, consider forming one. If you have one and it's not really very active, talk to us about how to help you with that. We try really hard to be inclusive as much as we can. Justine sets up these quarterly Coalition of State Horse Council meetings, and she doesn't just invite people who are part of the coalition, she invites everybody. So even if you aren't, you can learn from what they're doing. And the whole idea is to encourage you to be part of the coalition. So I'll pause there. Justine, you get the last few words in the last few minutes.
Well, I think you've covered it. You've hit the nail on the head there, Julie. Yeah, we're here to support you any way we can, to energize you, to get you thinking about the structure that you have existing. If you are a state horse council, is it working for you? Are you touching kind of all those pillars of committees or of importance for your state? Are you working to develop those relationships with agencies and associations and organizations that have an impact for you? Are you building those friendships, relationships with your state leaders? And definitely, if you need more suggestions, reach out anytime, email me, make sure you always reach out for American Horse Council's resources and help. I talk to them regularly, don't I, ladies? And yeah. So I just think that when we can all share what we've got going on and lean into experience of others, it just makes us all stronger. So thank you all for your time today.
Thank you so much. And I will say, don't be surprised if you get something from us at the American Horse Council that says, hey, we are putting forward a piece of legislation and we're creating a sign-on letter, and we'd love for you guys to be part of that. Amanda's doing that right now with a couple of different issues that we're facing. So we go to congressional offices, we say, here's the challenge, here's the issue, here's our proposed legislation to address this. And the more names we have on the sign-on letter, the more impactful it is. So that's really a big piece of trying to get you guys engaged in doing all this. So anything else anybody wants to contribute? We're almost at the top of the hour. I hope now I'm going to close with this because this is just me, Justine. If you found this useful, let us know. If you didn't find it useful, let us know, because our whole intent with this is to get you guys in a place where you feel like this is a productive, effective, efficient kind of dialogue and get you going. That's our whole objective here. So
if you have specific things on your mind, specific needs, resources that you need, or networking that you need, don't hesitate to reach out.
Exactly. And somebody just posted in the chat, yes, there is a list of state horse councils. Happy to share that with you so you know where they are. It doesn't mean that some states don't have a state horse council. It just means they're not part of the coalition.
And actually, I reviewed that list recently, and there's only 3 active states that are not members. So there's a lot of states that are no longer active. So if you're in one of those states that doesn't have a state horse council and you are eager to start one, let's have that conversation.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so Justine, you can put it in the chat, but you guys should know Justine's email, so you know how to get in touch with her. You guys know how to get in touch with us. We're at info@horsecouncil.org. And we'd love to continue this conversation in another forum, in another way, to keep you guys going. So anybody else that wants to add something? There you go. She's got her email there. Well, thank you guys. We recorded this. It's going to be available for replay, so you can hear it again. If you come up with questions after you listen to it the second time around, or if you signed up and you weren't able to make it today and you hear this, feel free to reach out to us with questions and we'll see if we can move this along. Justine, I think you have scheduled your first quarter 2026 meeting. Am I right?
I think so, but I have so much on the calendar. I can't remember what the day is. I should have looked at that first.
Look for that then, folks. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We hope you have a lovely weekend, and fall is here. Woohoo!